Hello and welcome back to Building on a Budget Models. I'm Thomas and this is the full build video of the Yamaha XV1000 Virago in 1/12 scale by Tamiya. Now firstly, most of the parts on the grey and black sprue I gave them a prime with Tamiya light grey primer whilst they were still on the sprue. I removed some and sanded down any burrs with the UMP sanding sticks that I often use. I also sanded down some of these joins and then gave it a coat of matte black acrylic. Now there's a lot of chrome parts on this, most of which needed super glue. I used Gorilla Glue gel to fit most of those into place. Lots of little screws and things like that. I used a very fine brush to add a little bit of silver paint to those. I mainly used Tamiya extra thin cement for the standard styrene parts and super glue for the chrome parts. These footrests had a little bit of matte black from Revell around the rubber parts. I also at times used a little bit of silver from Tamiya to cover up some of the scratches or burrs with the chrome. Now this is the housing for the tail light. I did a little bit of a rubber trim in black matte from Revell, and then I coloured the tail light itself in with red Sharpie. I used some Contact Clear from Revell to glue that into place. It's a little bit of an awkward fit, so do be careful with this. And then there's a pin to put it onto the rear mudguard. I used super glue for that, and then this mudguard goes into the frame as so. There's a couple of little screw heads on there, which I did in silver. It's then time to do the engine. Most of the silver parts were sprayed in a silver enamel paint beforehand. Now parts like this which needed to be gold, I used yellow Sharpie over the top, which worked really well. It did rub off occasionally, but fortunately it's really easy to reapply. If you do go down this method, be very careful, as I found that where super glue made contact with the yellow Sharpie, it changed it to red, as I think you might be able to see here in a moment. I then had to go over those bits with a little bit of gold paint afterwards. Little cap for I think it's the distributor cable. I found it was easier to attach the cable separately and then to plug it back in. The fitment of this kit is generally really good. One thing I will say is sometimes it's a little awkward to understand where things need to go from the instructions, so look at them really carefully if you're not sure. Again, with these chrome parts, I used a little yellow Sharpie to add the gold accents. Now these parts here, I think they're the carburetors. I did them in silver and then added some parts such as this little strap here in matte black. I did find that they went together very awkwardly and then didn't want to fit together very well in between the two, I think they're the like the cylinder heads of the engine. I actually found that I had to snap them back apart and then glue them into place. Good thing about using acrylic on these chrome parts is that any mistakes can be scratched off with something like a toothpick. Back part here will need to kind of clip into place on the frame of the bike, so make sure that it's nice and secure. The petrol tank here, I tried to sand away most of the burrs and then glue it together using some Tamiya extra thin cement. It was primed already, but once I was happy with it, I then sanded it down to try to remove as much of the join as possible. For the wheels, I went over them in the same silver as I did the engine, and then added accents in gold acrylic from Tamiya. The tyres are very thick, heavy duty sort of rubber or synthetic rubber, very good quality, but were a bit of a tight fit to get on. The kind of fatter one, as you can see here, is for the rear wheel. There's Bridgestone lettering on there, which you could pick out with white if you wanted to. Don't glue these chrome parts on, you'll put a screw through them later, which will allow the rear wheel to turn should you want it to. It's important to have a small flathead screwdriver because there are about 5 or 6 screws that go into this kit in various places. It also makes it much more secure to attach these parts than using glue. Now the rear suspension is a really nice it goes together really well. It's made of these 3 parts, and then you spin this donut shaped piece at the top to kind of lock the metal spring into place. I really like that. And then the top and the bottom need to be in gold, so I used the yellow Sharpie again. Do the same for the one on the other side. There's 2 little pins which go in either side to lock the kind of rear forks into place, and then you can glue the suspension to the kind of wheel hub and the frame. So again, the engine needs to be screwed into place at the bottom. Put in a screw on either side, and that fits it in really nice and securely. Now for the exhaust here, I found that if you sanded away the chrome on the inside and then used a bit of poly cement, it was really nice and secure. Then use some clips like these. You could use a clothes peg instead to make sure that it glues together really securely. There's a bit of complex threading to add these exhaust parts to the right place. So the front wheel is bigger than the rear wheel. Again, painted it silver from spray can first and then added the gold accents with a brush. The kickstand goes on the bottom really nicely. Don't add any glue to this. You can also add a little bit of gold to the pins to make them look like screw heads. Now, the coloured parts I did in this green metallic spray can. I really like the look of this. Once that was all cured, I then used a very fine brush to add gold acrylic from Tamiya for the Yamaha lettering. There's also Virago lettering that goes on the side of the electrical cover. Pretty happy with that. Then to add the rubber sort of trim behind it, I just add a little bit of black panel line accent from Tamiya. This worked really well, I felt. Went over the top with a cotton bud just to remove any excess. Now the tank opening on top needed to be gold, but I quite like the look of it in silver, so I left it in the plain chrome, and there's also a little decal that goes underneath that. Now for the other exhaust here, I sanded away the chrome on the inside and used some extra thin cement to secure it. I found the exhaust had to be held in place quite a long time. There are then these really nice gold pinstripe decals. I used some strong decal solution from UMP, but do be very careful with these as they don't like to hold their place very well. So I made sure that I was happy with the position before I added the UMP strong decal solution. Don't want to stretch it out of place or anything like that. I also used a cotton bud to try and sort of flatten it down once I was happy with the position. Pretty happy with that. There's then a frame for the backrest, which goes on either side on the rear. This actually covers up a lot of the imperfections on the rear mudguard. You can choose to do the mudguards in the same colour as the fuel tank on the top, as that's what I saw real versions of this bike have in many places. There's also a little 1000 decal that goes on the side of these little chrome tanks on either side. Can't see them very well once they're there though. Tweezers are very useful to fit in these very fine parts. It's another little gold Virago logo that goes on the back of this backrest. There's another tail light here on the chrome part, which I used red Sharpie to colour it in. A little semi-gloss black circle that goes above it, not sure what that is. Disc brakes mainly need to be a kind of iron colour, and then you can add accents with gold also around the outside. I later added some more kind of shading with some panel line accent. There is a correct way round for these, so look very carefully at the instructions and the parts. Now the forks at the front go together very, very delicately, so it's a good idea to make sure the super glue cures before putting on other parts. I found that tightening this screw here really helped keep things like the mudguard in place. Back seat is done in matte black acrylic. and there's the fuel tank. Clips on quite easily, but you can't see the join, so you need to be happy with it. Now for the forks here, I put this top section on at the same time as adding the screw through the main frame of the bike. That then lets you tighten all these parts together and keep it nice and secure. The Yamaha logo on the front needs to be done in black panel line accent, and I also used a little bit more on the disc brakes here. I decided to go with the New Jersey number plate for the rear. There's also a Yamaha one. It fell off, so I had to put it back on with a bit of super glue. These side markers here I did with some orange Sharpie. The headlights and indicators needed some gold, so I added the yellow Sharpie and then added the lenses using some Revell Contact Clear. A little bit of semi-gloss black to add some rubber trim to the arms here. And as there were no headlights themselves in the indicators, I used these miniature gems stickers. They're about 1mm wide, and the lenses themselves were coloured with orange Sharpie. That was super glued into place, had to hold this for a little while as well. The pin for the rear indicators is semicircular, which means it's easy to get in the right position. Handlebars clip on like this. They're done in matte black with silver for the brake handles. You may want to attach these mirrors once the handlebars are on the bike. There are then lots of brake cables to fit into place. I found that the centimetre squares on my cutting mat was a really good way of measuring them to size. However, you might sometimes find that the opening is too small. I used these pointed tweezers to just stretch open the end a little bit better. Really happy with how those look. There's a little hole in the back of this to add the cable, so thread it through like this and then tie a knot in it. I then found that this one wasn't quite long enough, so I gave it a little bit of stretch. Super glue this on and it stops the cable from being visible. The handlebars need to go into place before adding the instrument dials. Add just a little bit of super glue to hold these cables into place, and there we have it, it's finished. This was my first ever bike build. I'm pretty pleased with how it turned out, but do let me know what you think in the comments down below. I don't have any other bikes in the stash, so maybe I'll do another one again in the future, but really the options are open. So if you have one to recommend, please do write it in the comments below. Let me know what you think, and if you haven't, please subscribe and hit the bell icon. Thanks a lot for watching. I'll see you soon.